Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Collin Manley. Excited to talk some more baseball with you, getting you ready for this MLB season. It's a slow winter. Let's be honest. Let's call it is what it is. The offseason is not really picking up, but that doesn't mean that news doesn't continue to come our ways. There is so much going on continuously. And you know what? I think this podcast, this episode just breaks down to be a little bit more of a fun conversation, everything that seems to be going on at the moment. You know, we're going to talk about the news and noise, getting you updated on all your teams. Obviously, got to get that going on in an off season where there is so much happening when it comes to news. We're going to talk about the rumor mill. What are we hearing? What's being reported? With some few signings that are starting to trickle in, that changes what some teams are looking for. So we want to get you updated on that. We are going to talk about some off-season winner and losers so far. Now, don't get me wrong, these things could change, but we're just kind of taking a quick snapshot of everything that's been happening up to this point. We want to talk about it. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Cleveland Indians, the not so much longer to be Cleveland Indians. And that seems like a pretty great place to start, as it is being announced that the Cleveland Indians will most likely be changing their controversial nickname after the 2021 season. So at least for the moment, it seems like we are going to be calling them that for the next year, and we're not going to be the Cleveland Baseball Club. And while it's potential it could happen, there's like the Washington football team, it seems like they are taking the perspective that they're going to be prepared and at least play this year out and most likely make the change next year. I want to talk about this. Yes, I want to dive into this a little bit later in the podcast. So that one's going to be coming because I think there is a lot of fun potential names that we could go with this. But I'm saving that. We will come back to it. But moving on to some other news around the league, some moves that are actually happening. Well, a trade started to happen a little bit before we decided to start recording, as the Texas Rangers have traded right-handed reliever Rafael Montero to the Seattle Mariners in exchange for a pitching prospect and a player to be named later, announced today, Tuesday, December 15th, as of recording. 30-year-old Montero was a closer for most of the season last year for the Rangers. Wasn't necessarily their scheduled closer, as he kind of stepped into the position because of an injury to another guy. Appeared in 17 games, 8 for 8 in save situations, which is pretty good for a Rangers team that didn't have a lot of opportunities for wins last year, it felt like. And Montero was also 0-1 with a 4.08 ERA. So another upside move. He's a guy that's sitting in the back end of a bullpen, showed the ability to close games. I think the Mariners are really trying to buy to be a little more competitive next year. They had a real good surge, a fun surge last year as a team, so there's potential with some upcoming prospects as well that they could be on a little bit of an up and up. The Rangers back will be receiving 17-year-old Jose Corniel, right-handed pitcher, whom Seattle gave a $630,000 bonus in the last international signing period. Fastball that reaches mid-90s could, get a little better as he matures. 17 years old. A lot that could still be happening. Rangers also made their signing of David Dahl official recently, so there's a lot going on for the Rangers franchise overall. Sticking with some transaction news, Hunter Renfroe joining the Boston Red Sox. He was someone that was let go by our American Leafs foe Rays. Renfroe hit 33 home runs for the Padres in 2019. Struggled last year for the Tampa Bay Rays. Became more of a situational player, but solid defensively, something we do have to say for him. And it's funny because Renfroe was originally drafted by the Red Sox 10 years ago, 31st round, went on to play in Mississippi State, where he ended up being a first-round pick of the Padres later. Excited to be part of the Boston Red Sox, it seems. He brought up the fact that they were the first ones to draft him. I've seen some interesting situations on what's going to happen with Renfroe, if he's going to be an official starter for them. Does this mean that they're going to move on from Jackie Bradley Jr., who's a free agent? He's someone who, like I said, solid defensively, so he'll be able to play in a lot of places. If he gets that bat back a little bit, it could be a pretty nice upside signing. Only a one-year deal. We're going to see a lot more of these, I feel like, coming down the line. But all in all, just a ho-hum move, but it could be an exciting move down the line. Another signing that we saw, free agent reliever Greg Collin decided to stay with the Kansas City Royals on Monday, signing a one-year contract worth at least $2.75 million, can earn as much as $4.5 million, depending on how he does on performance bonuses. This was all being reported by Buster Olney of ESPN. Collin, who is now 35 years old, was 3-0 with 6 saves and a 1.91 ERA with Kansas City, made 28 appearances, pitching 28 and 1/3 innings. Didn't permit a run in his final 13 games. Solid. 3-time All-Star, made his debut with the Royals in 2010, spent his first 6 seasons there, went on to Colorado, St. Louis, Washington, Arizona, before coming back in 2020. 5th among active pitchers with 212 career saves and a 2.90 ERA in 10 seasons. He's a very solid back-end reliever, and he's going to have value. Cheap deal. And I don't necessarily know if the Royals will trade him. It seems like the Royals are trying to be competitive this year. They're making a lot of moves, so it seems like they have, the thought process that they're going to really go after teams and try to win as many games as they can. But Collin could potentially be a great trade piece down the line if they are interested to make that move. And speaking of moves, one that happened a little bit earlier in the last week, James McCann agreeing to sign with the New York Mets. Now, this is a big decision because the New York Mets were one of the teams that we thought were going to be very in on JT Realmuto. And it sounded like Realmuto wasn't the right option for the Mets just at the moment. And this is coming from Sandy Alderson, who is the team president. And, just exactly how I said it. They want to fill holes, but they wanted to fill them right now, it seemed like. And there wasn't any sort of compromise. They had conversations with Realmuto. And with talking to both, it just seemed like it made more sense to be going McCann's route instead of Realmuto. And this just tells me that they want to disperse some money in a few different directions instead of just going all in on one player. And this is no surprise. This is happening with a few guys right now. So nothing completely different there. I thought Realmuto was going to be a great fit. But this is good news for teams like the Phillies, who are most likely back in. I don't know if there's necessarily a very clear, concise decision now on Realmuto where he could go. There's going to be a lot of teams in play. And I sit here and I wonder with each passing day if he's going to have to sign for less years. But we'll see where this ultimately ends up going. Lastly, Dusty Baker had a very interesting interview. At 71 years old, stated he's unsure whether or not he wants to manage the Houston Astros beyond the 2021 season. Funny to hear that. He was quoted in saying in an interview, well, maybe. Depends how I feel. Depends on how the team feels about me. You never know what changes are going to come about in life. And this, the timing of this is important because this is the last year of Dusty's contract with the Astros. Was hired to replace A.J. Hinch, fired by the team. Big scandal that happened, if you haven't heard. And they decided as a team, the Astros, to pick up this year. It was an option. They didn't have to do it. I think the idea that they could have returned to Hinch was there, but they decided to roll with Dusty Baker instead. And the team, made the ALCS in a pandemic short season where there was a lot of crazy things going on. 29-31 in the regular season, one game of the World Series. And it was Baker's 23rd year as a manager. He's been all over the place. The Giants, Cubs, Nationals. Seen a lot. No longer the oldest manager in baseball, but still one that's seen many, many years. And so it's just making you wonder if it's a burnout thing. He thinks he's not up for it anymore. Last year's postseason run was incredible. I mean, with all the distractions and everything that's going on around the Astros, I'm sure a lot of people don't want the Astros to necessarily succeed and do a lot of great things because of the scandal that had happened. But regardless of what you feel on that, it's still quite impressive what they were able to pull off. And so, I tip my hat to that because it's not like Dusty asked for any of this. He came in to manage. That was his job. What had happened before that is not on him. So props to him. If he wants to keep going, hopefully the Astros give him an opportunity. But, there's also some very interesting situations coming up with the Astros when it's, talking contracts and what their team is going to look like in a few years. So I'm sure he is taking that all into consideration as well. So that's going to be it for news and noise around the league, making sure you're caught up on all 30 teams. Those moves are starting to slowly trickle in. Speaking of those big moves, we're going to have to talk about the rumor mill, and we're going to talk about that after we take a quick break here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Rumor mill, continuing to keep on rolling all the way up to when we were starting to do a little bit of recording today. Definitely wanted to get everything going on. And man, these big names are continuing to be brought up, discussed, talked about all over the place. We have a few of these that are starting to get shut down a little bit too, and that's a little unfortunate to see happening, as Mike Rizzo kind of dampering some talks when it comes to Chris Bryant and the Washington Nationals. Now, Nationals manager Dave Martinez threw a little bit of a spark on what was thought to be some dead trade rumors, telling reporters on Tuesday that Bryant's name had definitely come up in some conversations. So it had been discussed, talked about, at least out there at some point. But as a casual comment as it was, the GM for the Nationals definitely made it seem like it did not happen. As Rizzo said, they hadn't seriously discussed the possibility of adding Bryant in quote-unquote years. So they said they haven't been talking about it in a couple of years, which just, I don't know what to necessarily believe there. That makes the whole situation seem odd, because why would your manager even bring that up in any type of conversation if it wasn't even remotely relevant in recent years? It just seems like a silly conversation to even think about having, and it could potentially be some sort of smokescreen from the GM as well. And I don't know. Rizzo's saying that he hasn't been on his radar in the last couple of years. Thinks he's a great player at this point where they're at, their farm system. They don't think it's going to happen. And he ends up talking about how they need a middle of the order bat. That's one of their top priorities when they were struggling to put a whole team around Turner and Juan Soto, Trey Turner. But they don't really have a great farm system. They've been clear about that. And they don't want to go in on one guaranteed year of Bryant when they feel like they have other issues. But still, it seems like there's some conflicting reports coming from two sides of the Nationals, and it's still something that I definitely would want to be monitoring. But Rizzo saying that the Nationals are looking for a big bat, someone in the middle of their lineup, is noteworthy. Okay, so They thought an ideal hitter is going to be a first base or corner outfield position. Okay, interesting you bring that up. Are the Nationals then all of a sudden interested in Marcell Ozuna? Okay, are you going to look to make a trade elsewhere? There is other players that you could be talking about. Now, first base is not a loaded position, but there's a few outfielders that we could talk about. There's a few of them that we could bring up, Ozuna being obviously the big one. They also could be one of the few teams that are in on Real Muto. With the way everything has broken recently, that signing makes sense as well. Upgrade a position, upgrade your whole team. A lot of things that could happen. And now, we also have to bring in the fact that it's looking more likely that there's going to be no DH in the National League in 2021. So any move that is made is looking for this guy to be an everyday player. So while Ozuna seems to be a tough sell when you know what he is defensively, it's not like you can't throw him out there. He should be looking to DH in the American League first, but if the money is better in the National League, I understand it. It makes sense. I'm not going to argue it. Okay? Jackie Bradley Jr., someone who is starting to gather a lot of interest. With Hunter Renfroe being signed by the Red Sox, it puts things a little more in question. Now, the Red Sox said that they weren't necessarily closing the door on outfielders. You know, there was discussion that Alex Verdugo could move over to center field. I find that one interesting as well. I feel like Benintendi is going to be the other fit. Keep Verdugo out and right. But there's a lot of different things that we could do with that outfield. There's also potential that they could talk about a George Springer or other players as well. But Jackie Bradley Jr. is getting interest from other teams, such as the Phillies, Cubs, Blue Jays, and this is coming from the MLB Network insider John Morosi. Bradley, we talked about it, 283 last year, one of his best offensive batting seasons for a while. I mean, it's the highest batting average in a season for his career. He has an all-star appearance in the past, but in this shortened season, it was one of his best. 814 OPS, highest since 2016. That was his all-star season. So when you know he is top-notch defensively and he can give you anything at all when it comes to offense, he's a valuable player. Valuable player. Phillies trying to just add any depth they can, improve their team. Cubs, they're in a spotty situation, but hey, why not? The addition makes somewhat sense as you just lost Kyle Schwarber and got to fill an outfield spot. And the Blue Jays just trying to improve their team in any way they possibly can. But like I said, we aren't going to necessarily rule out the Red Sox just yet. As they have talked about, there is still some interest there. Still quite a bit of interest. Moving over to some pitchers, let's talk about the bullpen. Liam Hendriks, the biggest name out there when it comes to closers. Well, a lot of people have been checking in on him recently, and this comes from ESPN's Jeff Passan, believed that the White Sox appear to be the primary suitor for Hendriks. Makes a lot of sense. We've talked about this before. Alex Colome has been a fine closer, been good, especially for the White Sox. But he is not a strikeout guy. He is truly not a strikeout pitcher. Liam Hendriks is. And that's what you want. When we're getting late in the game and I need you to close things down for an inning, I don't want things to be in play. I want people to be swinging and missing if I can help it. Obviously, a big ask. A big ask. You'd rather, you'll take the outs if you can. But to be always swinging and missing, you got to be a good pitcher. You got to have good stuff. But that's what Hendriks has been the last couple seasons for the A's. So I like the decision. Seems like it's a good move. Improve that bullpen. That seemed like the next step for the White Sox as they were trying to get better and better moving into next season. But staying with some pitchers, if there's a big name, there's not one bigger than Trevor Bauer. And if he hasn't been connected to every team already, we're going to try to get there before he eventually signs. And this is coming from literally the San Francisco Chronicle. Trevor Bauer is among the free agents the Giants have been discussing. Now, Kevin Gausman, $18.9 million qualifying offer, something that was already signed for the Giants. But with that all said, they would love to add to their starting rotation. We talked about this early in the offseason. There is potential for the Giants to make some moves because they like to be creative. That front office will do what it can to try to sign some players. Johnny Cueto is their only starter that has any proven history, okay? But he's turning 35 and had a 5.33 ERA last year, returning from Tommy John surgery in 2019. So there's some questions there, some big time questions. And they were such a surprise team last year that they believe they can be competitive next season. Even with the Dodgers and the Padres ahead of them, the Giants think they are competitive. And with that said, starting pitching is going to be something that helps. You need to slow down some offenses that are really good in the National League West. Really good. So why not upgrade in a spot you know that is going to help you? I like it. I think it's a smart move. Why not? Especially if you're going in for 1 year. Staying over, though, on that West Coast, the Oakland Athletics have been in touch with free agent second baseman Tommy La Stella's representatives. And why not? Makes sense. Oakland had traded for La Stella during the season last year, getting him over from the Angels. And he was all right. He was fine. All-star for the Angels in 2019. 549 plate appearances over the past 2 seasons. He's batting around 290, 21 homers, and more walks than strikeouts. So he's just a steady bat. And it's just one of the many, many free agents that Oakland is dealing with. We talked about Liam Hendricks before, but also Marcus Semien is a big one. Mike Fiers, Joakim Soria. There's a lot of names out there. And the A's obviously also need to worry about their bullpen with Hendricks and Soria. But any returning player is going to be great. I mean, they just won the American League West. They dethroned the Astros team. They fought off a Mariners team surging. They were the class act. So they're going to try to return a lot of their players. La Stella was a great addition. He could be steady there for a full season. I like the idea. I like the move. But I'm a little more intrigued that we're not hearing a lot of news around Marcus Semien with the A's as someone who I think they really want to try and get back. Now, pitchers are going to be a hot commodity. A very hot commodity. And a lot of people are starting to believe it's a 2-team race when it comes to Trevor Bauer. Even with him getting some interest from the Giants, many believe it's coming down to the Mets and to the Angels. And this is just whispers around baseball, and this is coming from a former MLB general manager. This was said on MLB Network Radio. It's just all the indications. It's going to be one of those 2 teams. So it makes it very intriguing if the Angels do not land Bauer. They need to upgrade with starting pitching. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about this. And if it is not Trevor Bauer, it seems to be that a lot of people are thinking, and this is also coming from Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, that they're going to try and get aggressive, the Angels, in the starting pitching market. If they miss out on Bauer, there's beliefs they might make a push for Blake Snell. And there's also some ideas, some thoughts that maybe Justin Upton could be on his way out of Los Angeles, along with any type of top prospect they have to get Blake Snell. They don't want to overpay for someone who is not a top-end ace. So Jake Odorizzi, James Paxton, Tanaka, be a fine signing, but they want to get someone else top-end first. They are finally making the moves they need to make. That's the way I look at this. Put strong pitching around this offensive powerhouse. How do you give massive contracts to guys like Trout and this massive extension, pay Rendon, go get Shohei Ohtani? Yes, I know you were thinking he's going to help you both ways, but how do you not put into pitching when you put so much into your offense? So I like that this is something that's potentially coming. Sign these top-end pitchers. Trade for a top-end pitcher. It's what you need. It's what you need on this team. And sticking with those pitchers, if there's another name that's going to intrigue people out there, it's going to be Corey Kluber, as it looks like teams are going to get a look at Kluber for the first time in quite some quite a while. I mean, Kluber gave us 1 inning of work this last season, and he's planning to throw a bullpen session for teams that are interested towards the end of December. 2-time Cy Young winner, struggling with the Rangers, had a teres major strain, grade 2, hasn't had a full season since 2018. Red Sox, Twins have been teams that have been brought in with discussions for him, but I imagine there will be a lot there to watch him throw. I find it interesting that he's at this point. We usually don't hear about guys going to throw bullpen sessions for teams unless their careers are just might be over, might have very little chance. I think back to like Tim Lincecum doing this, trying to prove, hey, I still have it. I still can do something for you. And that's what this kind of has the feel for. I think Kluber could be a very nice, cheap signing. I like the idea of that. So we'll see if he can surprise a little bit. He's coming off 2 tough injuries. Hope to get a strong season out of him. I think he can make a team very, very, very happy. So that's going to be it for the rumor mill. We're going to move on. We have to talk about some potential early winners and losers. It may not be fair to grade just yet, but with how slow things are going, we got to check in on how this league has been doing. Some teams, players, everyone, where do they sit? It's coming up after a quick break here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Whether we think it's fair or not, I think it's time that we talk about some offseason winners and losers so far when it comes to our 2021 baseball offseason. Now, I got to be honest. Some of this could very quickly change. And it all depends on some teams and what they decide to do, some players, some contracts being agreed to. There's a lot that could potentially happen here. So I don't want to sit here and pretend like all of this is in stone. No, it's not, okay? But from what we have seen so far, we sure need to talk about what seems to be happening with a few teams. And up to this point, I have 3 what I thought clear-cut winners and 2 really clear-cut losers, the best way to put it. And so I kind of want to flip-flop, go through both of these, kind of both sides. And I want to start off with, if there is one team that I absolutely feel like is dominating this offseason in the sense of putting together more around their team, getting absolutely better, we need to talk about the Chicago White Sox. Now, they finished in 3rd place in the standings last year in the American League Central. They were leading a lot. They hit a tough stretch to end the year. Sorry, they finished in tied for second, third. They hit a tough stretch on the end of the year, something we kind of predicted. We thought that the Twins might jump in front just because of what their schedule was. But they have a lot of young, promising players on that team. They're bringing back a great amount of talent. So, obviously, they needed to look to some of their weaknesses and try to improve. Add a little depth? Yeah, they already went and did that move. Adam Eaton, was a very nice signing coming over from the Nationals, returning back to play for the White Sox. 1 year, $7 million. Okay. Adding a corner outfielder was a big, big thing for the White Sox. And they took a little bit of a gamble last year, decided this year they're not going to mess this up. And there were corner outfielders to choose from, all right? George Springer, Jock Peterson, Kyle Schwarber, Ed Rosario, Michael Brantley. Options. Lots of options. Eaton was a good move, and he's capable of filling that gap, giving quality at-bats, and being helpful for this team, okay? He's dealt with some injuries in the past. I understand that. But he has the ability to still be, if healthy, a great addition. Great addition and help this squad out. But that's not where it stopped there. Then they went out and made a big trade and got Lance Lynn to bolster their starting rotation. A starting rotation that was surprisingly pretty good last year. Had my concerns, for sure. But they come in now looking even better. As Lance Lynn had a solid season, and he comes in on a cheap contract. And if he performs again, he is going to meet that contract. Dallas Keuchel, Lucas Giolito, and now Lance Lynn as a 1-2-3, solid. Michael Kopech is another young pitcher that they have coming up, flamethrower, that they're also very high on, excited. He didn't pitch last year because, well, he was dealing with the COVID thing. He decided to opt out of the season, but he's still only 24 years old, and they're excited about him coming in. Dylan Cease, also a guy who is going to be serviceable, and he's now in the back end of your rotation. Back end at 24 years old. There is a lot of promise here on this team. And then, on top of all of it, they have decided that they are now going to be in a little bit on Liam Hendriks, which would be an upgrade on their bullpen if they're able to swing that move. And while nothing is written in stone, nothing is for sure, there's no ink to the paper on this. It's just belief that he is the possible top option. Primary suitor is what they think Hendriks is going to be. And if those moves ultimately happen, man, I like this team a lot more than last year. While the Twins got rid of Rosario, Nelson Cruz, we don't know if he's coming back. We have a lot of questions about the Twins. The Indians, there's a good chance that Lindor gets traded. Okay? There might be a little bit of regression with their pitching that's been really good. I just feel better about this White Sox team right now moving forward than I do with the other teams in the American League Central, and that's a win. You made your team better. You look stronger on paper. Good for them. Definitely a winner so far in this offseason. Potential one of our first losers. Okay, free agent big names. I'm sorry. This is just not going well for you guys. Now, we are not surprised learning everything that we know. Teams are a little scared to spend money. Okay? Deals are just very much in question. Money is in question. We have a lot of uncertainty on what's going to happen. Every team, whether you are big or small market, has been talking about the hit that they took last offseason, and they're scared with some contracts. I mean, if the Philadelphia Phillies are coming out and saying they're needing to make financial cuts, the Dodgers are saying they lost money last year. Okay, if these markets are telling you that things were not that great last year, that means the upcoming contracts and free agent market is tough. It's very, very, very tough. And so DJ LeMahieu, a guy that's in talks with the Yankees, they're saying that there's a sizable gap in their contract talks. And I don't think that's just the Yankees saying, oh, well, we don't think he's worth that value. No, they don't want to sign a massive contract right now. They're paying a lot of money to a lot of people. All right? Giancarlo Stanton and Garrett Cole are making a lot of money, and I know the Yankees are good for a lot of money, but they don't want to overpay on anything right now. Trevor Bauer only wants a 1-year, $30 million deal if he can get it. I don't know if that offer's been made yet. Otherwise, he would be signed somewhere most likely. George Springer, JT Realmuto. Well, Realmuto just lost out as McCann went to the team that he was supposed to be the top suitor for. Marcell Ozuna, well, the things just switched. No DH most likely in the National League. All right, now your suitors are cut in half to begin with. And Marcus Semien, all our shortstops, well, a lot of people know the shortstop market next year. It is just a tough, tough time for these top free agent big names. And I wonder if this means a lot of them take shorter deals. Bet on a money bounce back of some sort. Because they are all in a very, very tough situation. And with that said, I don't know if they really want to take lower than what they think their value is or try to bounce back in the same market next year. A lot of decisions to be made there. My second winner, I'm going to go with the Atlanta Braves. Okay? They made a move that just it made too much sense in signing Charlie Morton. 1-year deal, $15 million. It seemed a little predictable, like it was going to happen. I know that MLB.com was one that was on this from the get-go because the Rays didn't want to pay him. He didn't want to leave the area, really. So 1 year, $15 million, the Braves ponied up. And I now look at that rotation. Max Fried is very good. Mike Soroka, if he is healthy, also top-end pitcher. Ian Anderson, yeah, he's not very far into his career, but from what we've seen, promising. And then probably Charlie Morton there at 4. Pretty great spot to be in. Kyle Wright, another guy, 6.22 ERA career. We want better. But they're also taking a little bit of a chance on Drew Smyly. And now I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is the best move that has ever been made. Oh my gosh, look out, the Braves signed Drew Smyly. No, I get it. He's had an interesting career path and things haven't necessarily been great. But he is someone that you are buying in on as a high potential guy. Hasn't been the most healthy. He was designated for assignment back in 2019. Decided not to play for Milwaukee in their AAA affiliate in that same year. Went to the Philadelphia at a 4.45 ERA. Tough. Start 2020, he missed half the season with a finger problem. Then he comes in, had 4 very good starts in September. Speed in his fastball, massive bump. Then he got paid. He has the potential to put this starting rotation up another level. If Smyly is legit, along with Morton, along with Anderson, along with Fried, along with Soroka, you can very much argue that might be the best rotation in baseball. You could argue that. And I can get behind it. I can say that there's nothing wrong there. And now let's take into account that their offense was electrifying last year. Whew. That's great. All their focus is gone from the starting pitching. All the questions that they had up and down last year, gone. They are now going to move forward to, can we get the Freddie Freeman extension done? Which is move number 1, I would guess. Along with maybe a return of Marcell Ozuna. I see another move coming in here to bolster their offense in any way, shape, or form. But it was their question mark last year. Their starting pitching. And they weathered that storm and they said, we're going to double down and we're just going to get better. And I love that. I love that moves. I think that's great. Good for the Braves. My second loser, well, tough to call him a loser. Tough to call him a loser. But I'm looking at his situation, and Nolan Arenado is going to have to make a decision. What do you want in your career? Do you want to play for a contender? Because if you do, you got to turn down a great amount of money. And that great amount of money is you going to be most likely opting out next season. Whether you're traded this year and agree that you're going to opt out, try to re-sign, do something different, or you opt out at the end of this year and try to find a new team. Or you take the money, you take the contract, and you're going to most likely be sticking out with the Rockies. And I just don't see many easy ways for a team to trade you. Now, markets bouncing back. Money flow, cash flow coming back again, that'll help him. But do we necessarily know when that's going to happen? We're hopeful for next year. We're hopeful we get some fans in the stands. We're hoping that things change. But we don't know. We don't know. And it's hard to put him as a loser because maybe he thinks, hey, all this money I'm getting, I'm fine. I'll play things out in Colorado. Or maybe he's like, man, I just want to win. I'm a guy who wants to contend. I can opt out of this, no problem. I've made enough money in my career. You don't know necessarily where his head is at. But I think with everything that has happened this offseason, him not being very tradable has hurt. The Dodgers wanted in on him, but the money was tough. Again, we go back. If the Dodgers are telling you money is tough, you need to listen. You need to listen. That means something. And even trying to trade in conference for all, like it's hard. It's very hard. And I could have seen a few teams. We talked about the Cardinals in the past. That would have made sense. There were other teams that for sure would have went all in to try to make a trade for him and would have been happy with the extra years coming their way in a normal season. But since that isn't happening this year, tough for Nolan Arenado. Very tough. My last winner, I want you to hear me out on this one, because from everything we said, you might say, well, this sounds a little contradictory to before, but hear me out. Hear me out. Smaller markets might have won a little bit this year. Money is tough. Opportunity may be on the horizon. You may be thinking, well, what opportunity is there? If we continue to see these players struggling to get the contracts they want, long-term, guaranteed dollars, we might see some of these guys disperse a little bit and sign 1 year, maybe max 2-year deals, and try to contend and boost their stock. So teams that are small market but are quality, strong places to play might get more options than they normally would in a free agency period. Am I saying that JT Realmuto goes to the Milwaukee Brewers on a 3-year deal? No, not happening. Not happening. But we just saw Yasmani Grandal bet on himself in Milwaukee for 1 year and cash in the next season. Telling me that can't happen again this year. Telling me that a team might luck into something that the Oakland A's don't get a couple better deals than they're used to getting. It's possible. It's all very possible. I think the further and slower this thing goes, the more we're going to talk about these teams getting some chances. The more we're going to hear some interest from other places. And I like that for the league. I like the opportunity for other teams to at least get a season bouncing back from everything that happened this year to be more competitive. So smaller markets, I think they're slowly potentially liking what's going on. And I'm hoping they're checking in on more free agents saying, hey, we're here. What do we need to do for 1 year to get you in? 1 year. Let's talk. So that's what I have for some winners and losers this year. Again, these will flip. These will change. They have the potential to. But right now, where we're sitting, that's what we have. We're going to take one last quick break. When we come back, we got to talk about that baseball team in Cleveland. And hey, what's some possible name changes? This is fun. Fun stuff to dive into here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Cleveland, it is time for you to pick a new name. Well, maybe not just yet. maybe not just yet. We have a little bit of time, but the Cleveland Indians seems to be no longer after this upcoming season. So the 2021 season going to most likely still stick with the name. So we're not going to have our Washington football team like the NFL instead of the Cleveland Baseball Club, which I said it when Washington had to change from the Redskins. Washington football team, like it kind of sounds good. It kind of rings. I like it. Cleveland Baseball Club, just it's not the same thing. It's just not as great. But that doesn't mean they don't have options out there. We have a lot of fun ones, at least things that I've been looking into. And if you're a fan of the idea of Cleveland Baseball Club, CBC and the box score, power to you. I like the idea of club because, that's just more sophisticated. That's the baseball feel, We talk about our ball clubs, I like that. I like that idea. But I just think there's a lot better out there. And recently there was a USA Today article that talked about, hey, what are some options? And I think they threw some great ones out there. Obviously, the top option is the one that's been discussed in the past, and I think it's the best one. But I just want to ride through these. Let's look at some of we had. Cleveland Blues. All right. Now there's a link here. Music, blues, rock and roll. It all connects there. And we know Cleveland rocks. All right. There's some rock and roll history there. And the Blues name is tough because of the St. Louis Blues, hockey squad. But it actually was a team in baseball from 1879 to 1884. I know, short stretch, but that was a National League baseball team, so there is a connection there. There's a history root there. I don't think that's a bad way to go about it. Connection to the music thing going on in Cleveland makes sense. So if they want to go that route, power to them. A fun one that gives a nod to what we know about Cleveland baseball, well, at least when it comes to Hollywood, the Cleveland Wild Things. Ricky Vaughn coming out to throw first pitch, right? Maybe Charlie Sheen isn't the popular guy that he used to be, but the nod to the ex-convict, fireball, flamethrower, Ricky Vaughn, it's fun. It's fun. And even though he's a fictional character, that is such a classic Cleveland sports connection, all right? Whether you not a fan of how can you not be a fan of the movie? Let's start there. If you are not a fan of Major League and you like baseball, I need to hear from you. I don't know how you could possibly have that connection. It's one of those movies that every time it's on, I stop and watch. Even though on TV, obviously the edited version is just not nearly as good. All right. You missed so much in that edited version. But such a great movie. So if you actually want to knock the movie, I can't talk to you. Sorry. Cannot talk to you. It's a funny thing. Most likely would it happen? No. Bummer. But I like the idea of it. I would get behind it. I would not have any issues. So don't argue me with that one. Another one, Cleveland, Great Lakes, Lakers. I mean, I don't necessarily like the idea of having a name that's already out there. Get creative, get fun. I know a lot of people didn't like when the Pelicans came from New Orleans, but if there's something that I appreciate, it's different. I like different from the other leagues. When I watch baseball, basketball, football, and tune into some hockey as well, I don't like repeat names. Let's get creative. Let's do different things, even with logos. Let's just be different. All for that. And just the connection with the Cleveland area, Akron thing there. I get it. I get it. All makes sense. Also, there's maybe just too much of a connection with LeBron James on that one. Maybe just a little bit, but still fun all the same. Lake Erie right there. I mean, the city sits right on Lake Erie, so it makes sense. There was also some chatter about the Cleveland Municipals. Okay, so Cleveland Stadium, also known as Municipal Stadium, team's home, lakefront, until Jacobs Field opened in 1994. Became Progressive Field in 2008. Browns played there until 1995. The Municipals, they were had the idea that they could maybe cut the name to the Munis, pay homage to the city's past, present, future. It's fun. It's fun. I like the idea. It's definitely more of a connection for the people of Cleveland than obviously a lot of other people outside understanding, well, what's the connection here? Why is it this way? It's more an in-house name fun thing. And I'll go back to the Pelicans. Like a lot of people are like, why the heck the Pelicans? It has to do with the national bird in Louisiana. So there is a connection there. And I like the idea of that, but it's definitely not one of my favorites. Also, another connection that has been pushed, the Cleveland Buckeyes. Now, this is not something to just get Ohio State fans excited. While maybe some of them will like it. But it's more of a connection to the Negro American Leagues. Cleveland Buckeyes from 1943 1948. They were the Cleveland Cincinnati Buckeyes before they moved officially just to Cleveland, where they played, in Louisville for a little bit, Kentucky, returned to Cleveland 1950. There's history there as well. That is a fun one. Maybe a little bit too close to Ohio State. Like that's the thing. It wouldn't be my first choice, but I appreciate the history behind it all. I'll always appreciate that. But be careful when you make these names, these connections, too similar to something else that is out there already. The Cleveland Guardians. All right, so there's the Hope Memorial Bridge, which sits right outside Progressive Field. Okay, it has the quote-unquote known as the Guardians of Traffic statues, protectors of transportation, what they're called. Significant to the city, surrounding area, something that it seems like has picked up some steam around the area in Cleveland as a potential name change. And when you research this, there's definitely some fun possible logos we could do. There's some mock-up stuff out there, but when you look at the statues, like they're actually like big, strong, and really cool to look at. So I can see this one making sense as well. I can see this one going. You're going to have to explain to a lot of people where that necessarily comes from, but still all the same. And when you make a big connection like this to your city, why not? Why not dive into it all in? We also have the Cleveland Rocks and Rockers. Again, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Music connection in Cleveland. All right? It's not the first time that we are going to talk about people that have music identity for a nickname. All right? Utah Jazz. All right? We are going to have other ones out there. This one makes a lot of sense. Hometown, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Why not? I would get behind that one. But the two probably best options, one I like more than the other, but still really great. The Cleveland Naps. All right? Napoleon Larry LaJoie. Hope I didn't butcher that. Hope I didn't. Landed in Cleveland in 1902 when they were known as the Bronchos. Starting the next year, the team became known as Napoleons. They shortened it to Naps in honor of their star player, who was a player/manager from 1905 to 1909. Going back, some actual deep player history. And while Napoleon left as a player in 1914, that is the time that they jumped and changed the name to what is currently now the Indians. Following season, a guy who is in the Baseball Hall of Fame went in 1937 as a player. There's a deep root connection there to a very former player, a lot of history to that name. That one is fun. I like the history there. But if there's one that I just think is the best because it's the coolest mascot of them all, the coolest sounding name, I like this one the best. And there's history there as well. I think they should go with the Cleveland Spiders. Okay? And I'm just in a majority here of a lot of people that think that one's the best one. I know. I'm not getting creative here, okay? But the Cleveland Spiders just sounds the coolest. I like that, the idea. The only other team that I can truly think of, at least off the top of my head, that their mascot is the Spiders, Richmond Spiders. That's the only other one I can think of. So I like how rare and unique it is, okay? This comes from 1887. Forest Cities. It's their third professional team based in Cleveland. Became the Cleveland Spiders in 1889. They were there for 10 seasons. 1899 season is the most infamous campaign in baseball history. Their owners moved the team's best players to the St. Louis Browns. Their new investment, and the Spiders win 20 and 134. I know, that season just sounds so bad. But there's a history there, and I like the idea of them coming back to this, which has not necessarily a fun story to it, but coming back with redemption. Okay? We left. Our history of when they left the Spiders was bad. We're coming back to try to cleanse this campaign, make it better. Fun opportunity. We're turning the tides. And when you're already kind of changing the name from something that's a little, problematic, obviously there's some connections that obviously bothers people. It bothers some people. And it's a nickname that's controversial. And just going to get behind this. If you're one of the people that is just so upset that they're changing it, like it doesn't really bother you, okay? This really doesn't affect anything in your life, okay? Some people could be offended by this. We're just moving on. If they went and wanted to just change their names, just to change their names, you wouldn't bat an eye. So just because of the reason, don't get behind it. Just have fun with this. That's the best way to look at it. Have fun with it. And I think the change to the Cleveland Spiders is the most fun. I like it. It's unique. It's different. I think they could have a lot of fun going into this. I also have the Guardians one is growing on me. Each passing day, the more I talk about it, I think it's getting to be better and better. So I could definitely go with either of those, but if I had to put my vote down, Cleveland Spiders, let's move forward with it. Man, let's just get it going this year. I'm already behind it. Why not? Why not? But still fun all the same. I'm excited. I grew up in the Milwaukee Bucks era, and we've changed uniforms a few times. The Brewers have changed uniforms a few times. The Packers have never changed. And I just get excited to see new things. I like new because then it makes the stuff that's current become like history type thing. And I just think it brings a lot of fun to the game, personally. Some people like the consistency staying steady. Hey, there's people that love the Alabama uniforms the way they've been forever. I don't knock you for that. That's fine. Me personally, I like a little change. So I get excited for what Cleveland could do here. So that's going to be it for me here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast. A fun topic to end with. I want to thank you once again for listening. It means a great deal. Downloading. The support is always appreciated. If you had the opportunity, would love if you could leave a positive comment, review. What do you think? What do you think Cleveland should do with their name? What do you think about winners and losers so far this offseason? Would love to hear from you guys. It means a great deal. Once again, thank you. Collin Manley signing off here from the GSMC Baseball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.